Our opponent is Wigglebeard. Okay. The first time I trotted out this deck today, it gave me 2 7-drops in my opening hand, and it never gave me enough energy to cast them, so I had some dead cards in my hand the entire match, which still was maybe a little bit closer than my opponent would have liked it. I did get to 6 energy. They didn't know what I had in my hand. But when all that they do is land starve me, I tend not to include the video if I can help it. So we're starting over, and I don't have 7-drops in my hand. Here we will just destroy the attacker. And what does Breaches do? Sacrifice on the second spell each turn. What was that? +2 and first strike. So if I pass to blockers, they're not going to do anything. I'm going to try and exile this then. What can you do? They can draw a card. And it's exiled. Okay. That's a good enough start. I'll put out the Celestis now. We already exiled the card that might give us a trait with Urborg Scavengers. And another one of those. It's a cheap deck. That's a very cheap deck. Okay, let's try and hold them off just with the Evolved Spinoderm. It starts with Hexproof. We lose an oil counter each turn. I don't have a way in this deck to give it more oil counters. I don't have any proliferation spells. It's in here because it's June, it's Evergreen month, and the Evergreen term today is Hexproof. And that's what we made the deck out of. They're getting expensive. They gave a 3-drop. Opponent did not miss a land drop. And as is usual these days, they've managed to go through almost their entire hand while I still have most of my cards. Alright, what do we want to do? I think we try and get rid of somebody like that. And then we try and get rid of somebody like that. And then I don't mind attacking them. And sometimes you wonder if blue is doing things wrong, that they would be better served to have a useful spell rather than something that just digs through the deck. Instead of having 2 deduces, if they'd had one of those be a useful card right off the top, instead of a deduce. We have seen blue do very well with digging through their deck in the past. But sometimes I have narrowed down my deck construction by getting rid of some of these cards. But it may be part of their low mana strategy. Alright, so I think we just use as much energy as we can. I mean, technically I could cast 2 spells this turn, but I like they had problems against the Hexproof, so let's give them another Hexproof. And this one will be a good blocker. And we're ahead on damage, and we've got some tools here, so we feel reasonably comfortable at this stage. I don't need to worry too much about board wipes, do I? Their deck has just been so cheap so far. Still not missing a land drop while I am. I have missed a land drop. And I have an extra land in here. I think I have 25 lands in the deck, plus my little mana helper with the Celestis. But they're blue, so you gotta give them time. Okay, that doesn't have haste, it just has first strike, so that's a temporary bounce. And that'll ping me for some points of damage. Let's see. Let's go ahead and Metropolis. So now that we have Hexproof, that doesn't hurt us that much. I think we hold on to this 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we hold on to that just in case. And I'm okay with just sending in 5 points of damage this turn. So they saved 1 point of damage. This goes away. This dies next turn. It's going to lose its final oil counter. So there are limits to evolution, evidently. And yet another dig card. Their third time where they're using a spell to try and dig for something, anything that might be helpful. And they actually had to discard one Fading Hope, and they just used another Fading Hope. Okay, so now they can ping me for 1 more point of damage if I bring them and drop this Reformer down again. But if I just attack with the Living Conundrum... Do their creature... Oh, creature has trample. Their creature has trample. That's kind of cool. Okay, so we attack first. See what this card is. If they have anything they could do, they're just going to take it. We're going to take 1 point of damage from bringing this down. And then we get the Hexproof. So we bring down Scavengers. Oh no, it gets around it. Let's see, where's the trample? We exile Exuberant Fuseling, and that gives a counter to Urborg Scavengers, and Scavengers now gets the trample trait. Let's see this. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, it deals 3 damage to that player. See, this is what I don't like about the Hexproof rules. They gave me Hexproof. There are ways around the rule text where if you're playing a game of Commander and they say whenever somebody does something, each opponent that gets, a point of damage. That spreads the damage to everybody without targeting it. With this, I disagree with the rules on this. Whenever an opponent, a specific opponent, casts a spell with 3 mana or less, Scalding Viper does 1 damage to that specific player. That's targeting. And the way that they change the rules is they don't say target player. And because they don't say target player, that gets them around my Hexproof. I disagree with that. I will always disagree with that. Is there anybody that has a good thing? No, we'll just get rid of another creature. And we took long enough, they weren't sitting still for that. Yeah, I kind of had fun, but I disagree with your Hexproof rules. If I were an employee at Wizards of the Coast, and they have... Mark Rosewater's talked about behind the scenes on how they've had a ton of arguments about things. That would probably be the thing I would argue the most about until I went hoarse. Is that you can't say you're doing damage to that player and say it's not a targeted effect. Anyway, okay, this deck is called Hexproof Armor. It's based on the idea that I've talked about recently for what I'm doing differently this year for the Evergreen month. Just for those who don't know, this is my 4th year doing this. I kicked off my broadcasting career, so to speak, this hobby on YouTube of publishing my Magic gameplay with Evergreen month as a tutorial for new players, so that I would just take a mechanic each time and I would load up the deck with tons of examples of that particular mechanic, so that they would see it in action. They could have a chance to ask questions. They could see how the different versions of cards that were designed with that mechanic on it operated with each other, if there were any synergies, things of that nature. So what I'm doing this year is I'm taking a lot of the newer cards and I'm mixing them with some of the oldest cards because we didn't go through a regular standard rotation. They delayed rotation for a year, but when they made that choice, they hadn't planned on it at that point in time. So they had designed the older cards with the idea they were going to rotate out, and they were designing some newer cards, and then somebody made the decision and said, okay, we're pulling this ripcord because we've listened to the feedback from the players. They want their cards to last longer in this economy. They don't want to go to the local comic store and say, oh, we had rotation again. You have to buy a whole bunch of new cards. You can't use your favorites. They wanted to extend that period. So they listened to the fans. I think there was an argument for this on Arena too, but probably I think from their publicly released statements, their primary goal was to help out the local game stores with making sure to sort of recover from the pandemic and not having the tournaments and try and get them back to normal and that kind of thing, because the normal tournament play was kind of dying out a little bit. So that's one of the things they tried, but there's been this unintended effect that, hey, we've got some extra cards we can play with. How do these interact with each other when maybe they weren't designed with the idea that they were going to be together? So I call this deck Hexproof Armor because we've kind of got these interlocking pieces that give different things hexproof. And by the time we're done, if we can get enough of them out, we've got a permanent shield of hexproof around everything. And what we've got for defense, we've got Piercing Light, just take care of a 2-drop, and we can scry 1. We've got Skrell Defector Might. We don't care about the Toxic so much, but it comes down with Summoning Sickness, so you can't do this the turn it comes down. But the next turn, you could tap it, choose a color. It costs either 1 white or 2 life because it's Phyrexian mana. Another target you control, another target creature, gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color until end of turn. So if I've got a creature that does not have Hexproof on it, I can give it Hexproof with Skrell. I don't know if Summoning Sickness is still a term that's being used because Wizards of the Coast has been updating the vocabulary a lot. Summoning Sickness is how I sort of grew up playing the game when I discovered it in college back in the mid-90s. So if there's a new term that's used besides Summoning Sickness, somebody let me know in the comments if that term has sort of been replaced by anything modern in the present day and age, because Summoning Sickness is all that I grew up knowing it by. We have Family Reunion for the second choice there. Creatures you control gain Hexproof until end of turn. You might think it's weird to have an instant that gives Hexproof in a deck that already has a bunch of creatures that have Hexproof, but there are some gaps in our shields, so to speak, and this can help close one in a surprising way that the opponent might not expect. It sometimes helps us close out a game. For interaction, we have 3 Fierce Retributions to destroy the attacking creatures. My 1 copy of Get Lost I have to take care of a creature, an enchantment, or a planeswalker. And my 1 copy of Not on My Watch that instead of destroying the attacking creature, it exiles the attacking creature. For artifacts and enchantments or tapped creature, if I need to, I've got 1 Banishing Slash in the deck, and I've got 2 board wipes. I've got 1 Depopulate here, and I've got a Vanquish the Horde. And finally, we have 4 copies of Leyline Binding, which, because I ended up using 4 colors, this is going to be real cheap. So, and I did shoehorn in 1 copy of Jetmir's Garden, so this could conceivably get down so it only costs 1 white mana, but it's usually going to cost 2 or 3. The overall mana cost is expensive. It's 3.8. I've got 26 lands in here, not 25. 26 plus the Celestis to help me out with mana generation and land draw. And if I'm not getting things, maybe I can dig and find what I need with the Celestis. But since I have Leyline Binding and we're dealing with Hexproof, I also have 2 copies of Zur the Eternal Schemer. Enchantment creatures you control have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. Now, I don't have a lot of enchantments in here, right? But I do have Leyline Binding. So you can use, assuming you have Zur on the battlefield, you can pay 1 and a white and turn Leyline Binding into an enchantment creature, so you automatically have something that becomes a 6/6 with Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. And that's because it doesn't matter how cheap the cost was for me to bring it down. When the rules look at this, when Zur looks at this to see what its base power and toughness, it looks at the overall mana value in the upper right. And that's what counts. That's what matters. Doesn't matter if I got it down for 3, it's going to be a 6/6 creature all day long. So I forget if I started with Zur and then went to Leyline Binding, or if I put in Leyline Binding. I think I started with Zur and got the idea to add in Leyline Binding. Normally, I would take something like Zur and make a lot more enchantments in the deck and build a deck around Zur specifically. I've done that once in the past when I only had one copy. But the theme today is Hexproof, so we don't have that kind of extra build around. Same thing for the 3 copies of Evolved Spinoderm. Normally, if I was going to build a deck around this, I would have some proliferate spells in, I would have lands that allow me to add on oil counters, anything so that this thing doesn't die on turn 4 of it being out on the battlefield. I don't care this time because it's got Hexproof, that's why it's in there, that's the theme. Okay, what else do we have? We have 2 copies of Metropolis Reformer, and we have 2 copies of Sigarda Font of Blessings. I probably opened like 24 packs of Aftermath cards to get my second copy of each, because I only had 1 copy of each. But I wanted 2, and so I stopped after I had 2 of each. Metropolis Reformer gives you as the Planeswalker yourself, Hexproof. 2/3 flying with Vigilance. Also, whenever it's dealt damage, you gain that much life. That can come in really handy because most people don't seem to read the card that far, and it's always a surprise to them when they're doing what they think might be a final attack, and I'll block a 12/12 with this and I'll get 12 life. Sigarda Font of Blessing says other permanents you control have Hexproof. You can also look at the top card of your library anytime. You can cast angel spells and human spells from the top of your library. We're ignoring that third sentence. Again, this is like a build-around card. I've made an angel human tribal deck with this card as the centerpiece, and it worked out nicely. It was a good deck. But in this case, Hexproof is what we're looking at. That's the only thing that we're caring for. Okay, what else do we have? We have 2 Urborg Scavengers. When it enters the battlefield, you exile a target card from a graveyard, put a counter on the Scavengers, and they get a mechanic. So if I lose a Hexproof creature, I'm just going to slap down an Urborg Scavengers, exile that creature from my graveyard, and give Hexproof to the Scavengers. That's the main thing there. So if we don't have it, we can get it. Now this is some of the newer cards. Like, let me go over the older cards real quick just to kind of show you what the difference is. And if you're not familiar with the history, I'm going to get into a little bit of the history of Hexproof. And if you're an old hat and know all this, you can scan right ahead, I guess, to the deck play. But before Hexproof, there was Shroud, and with Shroud, you could not target your own spells or creatures with Shroud. Once you put something down with Shroud, whether it was a creature or enchantment, that was basically done. You could, if you had some sort of board wipe effect, like destroy all enchantments, you could get rid of it. But other than that, Shroud couldn't be touched, and it caused a problem in table play because players always misunderstood it. They thought they should be able to take a Shroud creature that they own and still affect it somehow. And that's not how Shroud worked. It didn't target things. So this caused a lot of heartburn for a while, and then they decided, you know what, let's let the players have a mechanic where it behaves the way they want it to and they expect it to, because it was just causing so many problems with tournament rules and people stopping the games to ask questions and stuff like that. So instead of Shroud, they invented Hexproof, and Hexproof, now it's just the opponent that can't target your creature or your spell. You can put a giant growth on a Caretaker. Now this, they thought maybe solved things, got rid of some of the complications of Shroud. But Hexproof is kind of proven in their eyes to be a real powerful, problematic mechanic over the years. Probably if you made a top 10 list, Hexproof would probably be the most, call it, overpowered mechanic that they think gives them design problems in the entire game. So they've changed the way they design things. This is an older card from Innistrad, right? It's a creature with Hexproof. The Hexproof stays. It's permanent. It has Hexproof all the time. For when you go forward in time, you look at things like the Aftermath cards. Permanents have Hexproof. That's kind of permanent, right? But then here, let's see, we've got Sereth, Viper's Fang. This is an old card too. Other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch. Other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. They get it all the time. Now let's go look at the other cards that I have that are newer. Okay, we've got, now one does have Hexproof all the time, and that's Living Conundrum. And all this other stuff about drawing a card while your library has no cards in it, we just ignore because we only care about the Hexproof. So it's 2/5 Hexproof, and that's kind of like the old design. It has it, there's no conditions, it's always going to have it, that kind of thing. The newer cards, this is Phyrexia, one for all, or all will be one, I should say. It has hexproof for the first 2 turns that it has the oil counters. Every time it loses an oil counter, once it's down to 2 oil counters, it gets trampled, it loses the hexproof. So it's a conditional hexproof, a temporary hexproof. We have 1 copy of Pompous Gadabout from Markov Manor. It's hexproof as long as it's your turn. Also can't be blocked by creatures that don't have a name. I think that just means you can't be blocked by tokens, and that's it. I don't know if there are any other attributes to that feature. But then the last one, 1 copy of Stoic Sphinx, a 5/3 Sphinx with flash. You can flash it on the opponent's turn. Has hexproof when conditionally, as long as you haven't cast a spell this turn. So these newer cards from the newer expansions, as we get newer, there are still some that have the regular hexproof, but they're, it's a 2/5 hexproof. It's not that bad. This is a little bit more powerful. This is a little bit more powerful, but they don't have hexproof all the time. There's conditions there. So I think that's interesting. The final cards, we have Enduring Angel, which, like the Metropolis Reformer, gives me hexproof. And if I get reduced to 0 or less, then the creature transforms into Angelic Enforcer, you see to the right. I still have hexproof, and then my power and toughness are equal to the life total. Or I should say, the Angelic Enforcer's power and toughness are equal to my life total. But whenever she attacks, I get to double my life total. So if the enemy gets me to 0, I turn into 3. I get a 3/3 Angel. The next turn when I attack, as soon as it taps, I double my life total from 3 to 6, and she becomes, instead of a 3/3, she's a 6/6 flyer. Loses the flying, or loses the double strike, but keeps the flying. And then I have Kaya, the Intangible Slayer, 7-drop. This is a Planeswalker with hexproof. I had 3 copies, and I kept getting 2 copies in my opening hand. Or I'd get 1 copy in my opening hand, and in my first 4 draws, I'd get a second one. I lost so many matches in my playtesting because it did not want me to have that many copies. I have 3 copies of Kaya. I would love to build a deck that has all 3 copies in it someday. Arena does not let me do it. I went down to 2, and then I switched 1 copy of Kaya out for Atraxa because I realized I'm playing all 4 colors of Atraxa. I burned a Mythic Rare about a month ago to get this card. It is astounding how many decks I have managed to throw it into, most of which have been involved getting stuff from the graveyard, or just bringing it out of my hand without paying the casting cost. It is atrocious how many ways Wizard makes it that you can cheat this card out. But it finally dawned on me. It took me forever to realize it until the end of my playtesting, and I said, hey, wait a second. I can just cast this. I've got all 4 colors in this deck. So 1 copy of Kaya, 1 copy of Atraxa, just because it matches the colors finally. And those are all the cards. And we're just going to go into the match now with Hexproof Armor as part of Evergreen month here at Tpull's Corner. If anything was confusing in that explanation, leave me a comment, let me know, ask me your questions. Shroud does still exist if you go into the older formats like Historic. It's not like they got rid of the cards. They didn't ban the Shroud cards. Oh, we're playing poker, are we? All white spells and no white mana. Well, we did win our last battle. We're up against Donkaroo. I think this means we're supposed to mulligan. Just for grins and giggles, I'm going to keep it. Let's see if they just stick with 2 mana, then we know we're getting mana starved, and we know the machine's just getting back at us and enforcing this artificial 50% win-loss ratio. We already have to lose Bosiju as just a regular land. So we missed 2 of our land drops already. 2 chances to draw land. Okay, so we're just going to lose. So I'm just going to cancel. I'm going to concede. I don't know that mulliganing would have made any difference. Arena does this to me all the time. I don't think I'm alone. I've seen this happen to other streamers. You win one, then suddenly, for no explicable reason, even though I have extra lands in the deck, it still stars me. And I get starved at a at a percentage that is above the listed percentage that it is supposed to happen. Just so you know, because I've been tracking it. But I'm not bitter. Okay, so Shroud is still around, but it's very unlikely that they will ever release it in a new set, right? They considered it complicated, too complicated. They invented Hexproof to try and fix Shroud. So Shroud's not really coming back. The old cards exist. If you want to play some Shroud cards, you can go in the older formats where those are unrestricted and play them. Hexproof is proven difficult enough that they're changing, you know, like Pompous Gadabout only has Hexproof during his turn. They're making these changes. Leyline Binding just got affordable, just about. They do have a Restless Anchorage, so we've got to be worried about that now. But they still think that Hexproof is kind of problematic, so not only are they redesigning the way, or re-examining the way that they design cards with Hexproof included, but they've also taken using Ward a lot more. Ward is kind of like their next solution for Hexproof, which there are some issues they're having with that as well. I don't know if we have to worry about counterspells or not, but let's go ahead and just try and put something down. And also, y'all, if you like these little history lessons about Shroud to Hexproof to Ward and that kind of stuff, and you want to hear more about that, let me know. I'm happy to give you as much knowledge as I have. Or we can also, yeah, okay. Counterspell, took them long enough to figure it out. They're blue, you got to give them time to think about it. Okay, we might be in trouble because they're blue, they're counterspell, and they haven't missed a land drop. And I'd like Celestis to land, which means I probably have to try another spell. And the more often that they do nothing, the more likely they are holding another counterspell. But since I'm already behind on land, I can't really just sit and wait. I need to get to a point where I have enough land where I can cast 2 spells a turn. And I'm still getting land starved. At least relative to them. When you're facing blue counterspell, 1 land makes a big difference. I expect them to counterspell this. There we go. Second copy of No More Lies. Opponent does not miss a land drop. Sing along if that sounds familiar. You could at least give me my Field of Ruin. Okay. Here we go again. This is our 3rd threat. Would they let that through? I mean, if they've got the counterspell, you've got to expect that they think that I'm going to be running out of threats at some point, right? So if they've got the counterspell now, it's logical to use it. There we are. Plus they get a creature. So happy for you. 6 lands to 4 against a control deck. Yeah, life is good. This is going to be great. It's going to be great! Finally got 1 more land. I still cannot cast the stuff that I want to cast. This does let me cast Get Lost if they want to attack with the land. I'm assuming they're going to counter this as well. I don't have anything with flying yet. Okay, another No More Lies. And I kind of want them to attack with this now. Because if they spend 3, that's only 2 open mana. Let's force the issue. I'll give you 2 map tokens if you let that go. I would let them destroy it. But they've got 5 cards. And they've got me beat on land still. So maybe they feel like they've got a plethora of tools here. Okay, they let that go. Okay, now I can at least cast 2 spells. And if they have another No More Lies, I can pay for this one. I would be so happy just to get one thing on the board at this point. Yay! Man, they considered that a long time, didn't they? Okay. What about Celestis? I'm willing now that I have 5 lands. Okay. So they get a spirit, and they're just somehow getting all of the cheap counterspells all up front. Maybe they ran out now, so they're reduced to digging. By the way, opponent has missed a land drop. From all appearances, they have a decidedly superior position. I guess I should be used to this delay from control players by now. It's a fairly straightforward line of play. It's not like I'm extra complicated right now. I've got a 1/1 on the board. That's all there is to it. Do they not want the poison? Okay, we have 2 of those, so let's try. We're still missing land drops, so we can't afford the 3 in case they have their other No More Lies. This would give me a blocker. They let that go. That's very interesting. Okay. We have 2 things on the board. Hey, boo-boo. It's a white spirit creature. I could attack with that maybe and give my creature hexproof. It's just a land. You don't get to beat my 2/3. My 2/3 can still beat you. Neener, neener, neener. Oink, oink, oink. And it has vigilance. Life is good. But I can't attack into the 2/3 here. They are really conservative, aren't they? Okay. We try for the next one. If they spend... No, they let that go too. Okay. If I go here and let them declare blockers, if they activate the Restless Anchorage, then I can activate Skrelv. If I want to. Wandering Emperor. Okay. Mine have vigilance. They can't exile it.
But I'm going to end it.
They can create tokens. What happens if... we do this? Do they have Wandering Emperor and an entirely other counterspell? I mean, I did what I can with all my lands. Hang on. I need to spend life on this one, right? White. Okay, so they counter my spell, but I don't lose my Reformer to the 3/3. No more lies, Phantom Interference, and 3 steps ahead. That's a lot of counter spells. Seriously? I should have expected that. It's blue-white control, right? I don't know how many more matches I'll be able to get through. This one is taking so long.
The edge in this fight.
Great, when I need something else finally. Alright, we have Hexproof again. I don't know if that matters. They could have their next Sunfile easily enough. Or if I go and attack their Wandering Emperor, they could just bring down another Wandering Emperor and exile it. So they've got so many cards and I'm down to nothing. And kind of picked the wrong time to start drawing lands instead of something else, but
keep watch for intruders.
That's Arena's delayed reaction. They don't want me to win anyway, so what are you gonna do? I'm just gonna take that 5 points of damage. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to see what else I can get around here. It's a land. Land, land, and land. So after keeping me behind for the entire match, now you give me 3 lands. So this may die. I can't really sit around and let the Planeswalker stay, right? Into Ganjo. Every answer, every step of the way, every turn. And now look, I have 0 cards in my hand. I no longer have Hexproof, and look how long they're taking. Disgraceful.
Remember your training.
You could attack with Restless Anchorage finally, because I still haven't been dealt my fill to Rune. I guess they're just keeping their mana open for a counterspell. Okay, that is not enough to stop anything. We're out of here. So, I mean, even though I have extra lands in the deck, this happens all too often where my opponents make every single land drop, and I do not. It really matters when you're facing blue-white control. Alright, we'll try for one more. Okay, this thing can bring non-land permanents back from the graveyard, which we do not like, of course. So we get rid of it. Okay, we've got a swamp. We've got access to blue. I think we need another plains. This is kind of the worst card, one of the worst cards to get in the opening hand. Just because you need creatures to make it worthwhile. And I think I'm down to 1 copy in that. I think I started with 4 copies and dwindled it down to 1. Because this was another one where I was getting multiple copies in my opening hand and it was being pretty useless. Do we get rid of that? No. Let's just use a Ganjo to take out a creature. This opponent is faster than the previous opponent, and they're smart enough to attack before using any of their mana. So, I think they know what they're doing. Missed a land drop. But they did too. We don't have any green, so we have 3 dead cards in our hand. Pass the turn. Thank you, Arena.
This is my home, and I don't appreciate it when
We
people
will
touch my
discard
things.
this card.
I'm tired of your secrets.
And we will get rid of Liliana.
Fine. I know when I'm not wanted.
Okay, we have down Gadabout. They are having land problems, but their most expensive card is 5 and everything else is 3.
Something suspicious is going on. And for once, it's not my fault. Ah, one of your friends has to leave.
They are ready with everything.
We all have things we'd rather forget.
If they have removal, that's the end of the road. That's all there is to it. Let's try and block one. It worked. They got just enough mana to do their board wipe. That's cute.
You won't be outsmarting me.
And thank you, Arena. Now they can afford to cast their final spell. Just another Planeswalker. Yeah, gotta clear that off so they can build up Liliana.
I bring order to this broken world. You will serve me well.
And
Drop it.
flooding out. Before they didn't give me land when I needed land the most, and now when I need something useful, when I've got enough land,
Blood for
they
knowledge.
give me this stuff.
A fair trade.
Look at that. What kind of stuff can I get? I don't think any of it matters. I think I'm dead no matter what, right? Let's play that. Okay, we can get rid of Liliana at least, so they don't make us sacrifice Atraxa.
I'll be back with friends.
Vanquish the Horde. Why not? You just have a backup. See, it just doesn't matter.
When I win,
Just doesn't
you're
matter.
telling me what you know about the Raven. Sacrifices must be made.
Nothing matters. That's 3 losses in a row, by the way. One to complete land starvation. Next, mild starvation. Followed by flooding when I didn't need the land. And then one more of land flooding. Well, they get everything that they want and everything they need. Because they only had 5 lands the entire match, and that was all they needed for everything. But I'm not bitter. Someday I'm going to be able to show you what this deck can actually do. We'll get there. What I may do is just split this video into 2 parts. And I'll just show you how Arena normally treats me, because this is how it's been treating me. I had a sweet spot when I first had the deck configured the way I wanted it to, where I won several in a row. And ever since then, I've been put up against the most unbelievable mana curves and stuff like that. It's been pretty ridiculous. I don't have any green either, do I? Okay, so we'll use that for now. They've got a Field of Ruin. I don't mind if they use it on me now. Access to 3 colors, and I still can't cast a single spell. Well, a single creature, I mean to say. Okay. Now Field of Ruin can't be used on my lands for the moment. They're ready with removal. Now do you use Field of Ruin? Yes, you do. I don't have 2 blue, so I'm going to lose the ley line off the top of the deck. But I can go get another green. And of course you give me my other green, now that I don't need the green. Thanks, Arena. No way. Well, I shouldn't be surprised. This actually happened to me during my playtesting. I put down a single hexproof creature, and they scoop. So, I guess that's good to show you, because that does happen. So, yet again, I don't have to actually do a lot of work when creating decks. If they'll just pummel my face for a while, and as soon as I successfully cast one good spell, they leave. So this is my typical experience with this, not just with this deck, but with a lot of decks for the past couple weeks, where I have long drawn out battles, lose, and then, oh hey, I put down one spell and the game's over, the match is over. It would be nice to have a slightly longer match where I actually win instead of them just running away scared because I got one spell off. I mean, they didn't even wait for me to hit him in the face. We're planeswalkers dueling each other. I expect you to stand there and get hit in the face. Looks like we might be up against poison for a strategy here. Let's see if the Celestis can get down. Or if they're counterspell heavy. It looks like they could have maybe done something. Or do they have a dig spell? We don't know. We just don't know, and they're not doing anything. So, since I have 2 copies of this, let's try it. Okay, a second Bring the Ending. Opponent matches my land drops, and they sit tight, not doing anything. Now we can afford to pay the 2. So I don't hesitate at all. I just bring out the exact same thing. Spell Stutter. We can afford this. That was the wrong thing to do. You're either bad at math or you're getting desperate. But they didn't scoop. So we're good. They haven't just fled in terror at the appearance of the evolved Spinoderm. We did make them stop and look. They are paying attention. Let's just go ahead and put that down. We swing in for 5. We finally get to hit an opponent in the face. Huzzah! Why? Because you can't do anything to a hexproof creature. Okay, hexproof is gone. Don't have to worry about counter spells. Attack again, see if they're going to bother blocking or not for a chump block. They do not. Our hexproof is gone on the creature, but Metropolis Reformer now gives us as the planeswalker ourselves hexproof. I'll take it. Awaken the Woods. I have trample, so this isn't the biggest deal there. I think we just go attack with everybody. They take it. And let's get rid of the clear cutter. Just because we can. And now I have Family Reunion, which will give hexproof on the Metropolis Reformer if they try anything against that. Whenever a land, they get a +1. Those are land creature tokens. Let's use Leyline's Binding, and we'll get rid of Roaring Earth before those trigger. Okay, you're tapped out. Take action. And they don't hang around. We were going to use the +1 on Family Reunion for a change and put it on the Metropolis Reformer. All right, I think we're back to a 50-50 success ratio. They're giving us tickets with this new thing. Let me show you just in case you haven't visited it yet. Visit the Hideaway. Psychic Frog's Horizon Hideaway, and this is instead of the regular Mastery Passes. They'll give you tickets. You can't spend the tickets until you pay your gems. And they've got a whole bunch of things that you can get. But the problem is, when you do a regular Mastery Pass, I usually pay the extra to get a bigger discount. But you kind of get 1,200 gems back, and you don't get any gems back here that I can see. There's avatars, there's sleeves, there's cards as rewards. And I could probably get a lot of these tickets. I've got 173 already, so, you know, like, I can already get one copy of Ulamog, and then this will be gone. You know, I could get Ulamog and Kalia, and then I could keep on saving and spend. But I'm not going to, because you can see I only got 2,000 gems right now, and the regular Mastery Pass is a better deal. So I can't think of anything better to do than to boycott this and say, no, you can't introduce a new mechanism that makes the economy even worse when we thought the economy was bad to begin with. That's just not kosher. I can spend gems for a regular Mastery Pass on a regular set release. They're doing something different for Modern Horizons. They're introducing the Psychic Frog nonsense. But they're not offering up any gems as part of the compensation that I know of. And so that just makes it more expensive to get the rewards. I mean, if you really want an Ulamog avatar, I guess you go for it. I just feel like it's a bad deal. I don't feel I should bust my butt to try and get more gems to spend on that. And it's a shame because I wouldn't mind having, you know, that type of thing. I wouldn't mind having an Ulamog avatar. It looks cool. I like Ulamog. Is that going to be the only place, the only opportunity to get it? It's a worse deal than the one you offered me already playing the game. I'm not going to do it. Okay, we went a while without having a 7-drop on our opening hand. They gave us both, and our opponent just scoops out of nowhere. Even though they weren't land-starved. So we're gonna end up just with a bunch of tickets that are useless to us that go unspent, basically. That are going to be meaningless for us. And so it's yet another aspect of the game in which I can't participate. Well, in which I refuse to participate. Because even though I'm a free-to-play player, gems are hard to come by. I spend my gold supply to get gems, so I can get the Mastery Pass regularly. And that seems like a worthwhile deal. You can't introduce something new and say, hey, we've got a new system for doing things with this new set release. And you look at the numbers and you crunch the numbers and you're like, this is more expensive. The only thing I can think of is to minimize participation so that when they get data on how much people went for this new alternative, that hopefully it's less than usual and they don't try and do it again. They just go back to the old way. And we will be thankful with the normal cruddy economy as opposed to a worsening economy. And this will have to be the last match. I've got some expensive cards. We wait and see if we're going to be land starved again or not. I don't feel like I'm satisfied with this outing just because the people that have quit too quickly for me to show off the deck properly. And the other times I felt like there was just not really a genuine chance for me to get a couple of creatures down and have them show off what they can do together. So I guess we'll leave it up to y'all. Normally I make a recording and I fire it out. Don't edit. You get the unvarnished truth of what happens. This is my experience with this deck. It's actually been a worse experience if you saw how many times I'd gone up against Terror of the Peaks in a single day in a row. You might wet yourself. It's amazing how many all-flyer decks I came across. I opened up some sort of channel. This was before I put Traxa in. This is when I just had the 3 Kaya Planeswalkers. So the mix has changed already on me in the couple cards that I changed out. But I'll leave it up to a vote. If you want to see this deck again and see me try it again and see if we have better luck just demonstrating the overall deck, let me know if you're interested. I'm willing to trot these out for another go around. Normally I'm one and done because I don't want to do repeats for my audience. But I don't feel that I've shown off the glorious things that this deck can actually do. And we missed a lands drop. Again, Arena. These are happening with greater than the normal amount of percentage that should be happening. So it's pretty depressing. This is not fun play. This is not enjoyable, which is allegedly your plan for us on this platform. I think you need to look at your algorithms and change things somehow. Something needs to change. There's just way too much land starvation on the platform entirely. And for all I know, my opponent's getting land starved too, unless they just went away from keyboard. In which case, this is going to be one of the even more boring matches here at the end. Okay, so we win again. Woohoo! What an awesome deck. Let me go ahead and show you the full deck one more time. I think I am tempted to do another video on this, but I do want your feedback first. So please go ahead. As always, we ask you to like and subscribe. I feel like this has not been a good round of matches. I don't feel like it's been enjoyable enough for me, which is kind of bad. Usually I can at least say we've had an exciting match or two. I don't really feel like we had any good matches that involved skill in any of that. It was either predetermined win or predetermined loss. But go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know if you want to see us trot this out again and try again on another day and just see if we have a little better luck in finding some fun matches. And I'll leave it there. I'm out. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.